Welcome back to another episode of Speak Up. I'm Ryan, and today we have an exciting topic for anyone looking to improve their English speaking skills. Whether you're just starting out or you've been learning for a while, we're going to share some tried and tested hacks that can really make a difference. Now, speaking English confidently doesn't happen overnight. It's all about consistent effort and using the right techniques. In today's episode, we'll talk about some of the best ways to get there, no matter where you are in your language learning journey. I've been working with language learners for a long time, and I've seen firsthand how small, everyday habits can create big results over time. And we're not just talking theory today, we're getting into the practical tips that you can start using right after this podcast.
Hi everyone, I'm Priya, and I couldn't agree more. Learning to speak English fluently is definitely a process, but it's one that you can actually enjoy and feel good about along the way. I started learning English a few years ago, and I remember how intimidating it felt at first. But once I found the right methods, things that actually worked in my daily life, I started seeing real progress. And that's what we want to share today. These hacks we'll be discussing aren't just about memorizing vocabulary or grammar. They're about building confidence, learning in ways that fit your lifestyle, and staying motivated even when things get tough. I've been through that journey myself, so I'll be sharing some of my personal experiences, things that really helped me improve. By the end of this episode, we hope you'll have a set of tools that can help you speak more naturally and comfortably in English.
So, let's dive into our first hack: speaking every day, even if it's just for 5 minutes. You know, people often think they need hours of practice to improve, but honestly, it's the consistency that matters. If you can make it a habit to speak English every day, even for a short amount of time, you'll notice a difference. I've seen learners who start with just a few minutes of conversation practice each day, and within a few months, their confidence skyrockets. It's like exercising a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. And the best part? You don't even need a partner for this. Talk to yourself, describe what you're doing, or narrate your day in English. It might feel weird at first, but it works.
Absolutely, Ryan. I remember when I first started, I felt so self-conscious speaking, even just by myself. But I made a point to practice every day, even if it was just talking to myself while cooking or getting ready in the morning. It was those small moments that really helped build my fluency over time. And honestly, once you get comfortable hearing your own voice in English, it becomes a lot easier to speak to others. One trick I used was to set a timer for 5 minutes and just describe whatever I was doing, whether it was cleaning or making tea. It might sound silly, but the more I did it, the more natural speaking became.
Exactly, Priya. It's all about building that comfort level, right? And for listeners who feel shy or anxious about speaking with others, this is the perfect way to get started. You don't need an audience. You just need to speak. In fact, when you make speaking a daily habit, it becomes less about finding time and more about integrating English into your everyday life. For example, you could talk about what you're going to do during the day, or describe what you see around you. And before you know it, those 5 minutes will turn into 10, then 20, and eventually you'll feel ready for more challenging conversations.
Yes, and what's great about this hack is that you don't need any special tools, just your voice and a little bit of time. Plus, it builds confidence gradually. As you get more used to speaking, you'll feel less pressure when it comes to having real conversations with others. It's amazing how much progress you can make just by incorporating English into your daily routine. And when you pair this with some of the other hacks we'll talk about, like finding a language partner or recording yourself, it really supercharges your improvement.
Speaking of supercharging your improvement, that brings us to our next hack: recording yourself. This is one of those strategies that not enough learners take advantage of, but it's incredibly powerful. When you record yourself, you get a chance to listen back and actually hear what you sound like. It's like having a mirror for your speech. Sometimes you'll catch pronunciation mistakes or notice areas where you could sound more natural. But most importantly, it lets you track your progress. You might think you sound awkward in the beginning, but as you keep practicing, you'll notice real improvement over time.
Yes, Ryan. And that's something that really helped me early on. I would record myself reading short passages or just talking about my day, and at first I cringed a little listening back. But over time I started noticing patterns. like which words I mispronounce consistently or areas where I pause too much. Recording myself gave me the feedback I needed to make corrections. And it's not about being perfect right away, it's about hearing your progress. Sometimes I'd even listen to an old recording from a few months back just to remind myself how far I've come.
Exactly. It's such a great way to build confidence too, because you can actually hear the improvement happening. And for anyone listening, you don't need fancy equipment. Just use the voice recorder on your phone. You can start with something simple, like introducing yourself or talking about a hobby. Then, over time, challenge yourself by recording more complex thoughts or conversations. And if you want to push yourself even further, try recording a short speech or a presentation in English. The key is to keep it natural and review your recordings regularly.
Yes, and another thing that worked for me was comparing my recordings to native speakers. I'd watch videos or listen to podcasts and try to mimic their pronunciation and rhythm, then record myself saying the same things. It was a great way to improve not just my pronunciation, but also my intonation and speaking pace. And like Ryan said, it's a gradual process. Every time I listened to my recordings, I noticed little improvements, and that really motivated me to keep going.
So, moving on to our next hack, learning useful phrases instead of individual words. This is a game changer, especially if you want to sound more natural in conversations. The problem with just memorizing words is that, in real-life situations, it's hard to string them together naturally. But when you focus on phrases, you're learning how native speakers actually talk. Things like, "How's it going?" or "Could you repeat that?" are much more useful than isolated words because they fit right into everyday conversations.
Exactly. When I started focusing on phrases, it was like a light bulb moment for me. Instead of trying to think of the right word for every sentence, I already had these ready-made sentences I could use in common situations. For example, when I was traveling, phrases like, "How much does this cost?" or "Can you help me find?" were lifesavers. They help me communicate more smoothly without pausing to think too much. And the more you use these phrases, the more natural they become.
Right. And it's not just about being able to speak faster. It's also about sounding more authentic. When you use the same phrases that native speakers do, your speech flows more naturally. Plus, phrases give you a solid foundation to build on. Once you get comfortable with common expressions, you can start tweaking them to fit different contexts. For instance, instead of always saying, "Can you help me?" you can switch it up with, "Could I get some help with?" or "Do you mind helping me with?" It adds variety and flexibility to your conversations.
Yes. And what's great about this hack is that it reduces the pressure of trying to think on the spot. If you already know some key phrases, you don't have to scramble for words in the middle of a conversation. I used to carry a small notebook with useful phrases that I'd practice throughout the day, and it really helped me feel more confident. Now, those phrases just roll off my tongue without me even thinking about it. So, for anyone listening, I'd recommend making a list of phrases that are relevant to your daily life and practicing them regularly.
Now that we've talked about speaking and recording yourself, let's move on to another key hack, surrounding yourself with English through passive learning. This is one of the easiest ways to get more exposure to the language without feeling like you're studying all the time. By listening to English podcasts, watching shows, or even following English-speaking influencers, you're constantly hearing how native speakers communicate. And even if you don't understand everything at first, just having the language in the background can help improve your listening skills over time. It's like learning through osmosis.
Absolutely, Ryan. I can't tell you how much passive learning helped me when I was starting out. I used to watch TV shows like Friends with subtitles, and it made a huge difference. Not only was I learning new vocabulary, but I was also picking up on natural sentence structures and intonation. Even when I wasn't actively paying attention, just hearing the rhythm and flow of the language was a game changer for my speaking skills. Plus, it's fun. You get to learn while watching your favorite shows or listening to music, which takes the pressure off.
Exactly, Priya. It's all about making English part of your daily routine without feeling like it's a chore. You can listen to English podcasts while commuting or have English shows playing while you're cooking or cleaning. Even if you're not fully focused on what's being said, your brain is still absorbing the language patterns. And over time, you'll notice that certain words or phrases will start to stick. This kind of exposure also helps with pronunciation and understanding native speakers, especially when it comes to catching those little details like tone and slang.
Yes. And what I love about this hack is that it can be tailored to your interests. I used to watch YouTube videos on topics I was passionate about, like travel or cooking, and that made the learning process feel natural. It's important to choose content that you actually enjoy because that way, you'll be more motivated to listen regularly. And the great thing is, you don't have to force yourself to sit down and study. It's all about making English a part of your environment. The more you hear the language, the more familiar it becomes.
So once you've built some confidence through passive learning, the next step is to practice speaking with a language partner. This is where things get really exciting because you're not just speaking to yourself or recording your voice, you're actually having a real conversation. Finding a language partner can help you put all those phrases you've been learning into practice. It's also a great way to get feedback and learn in a more interactive way. When you speak to someone, you're forced to think on your feet, which really helps develop your fluency.
Yes, Ryan. That was a big turning point for me. I found a language partner on Tandem, and it made all the difference. Having real conversations pushed me to use what I'd learned in real-life situations. At first, I was nervous, but my language partner was really patient and supportive. We'd talk about simple things like our hobbies or what we did over the weekend, and slowly I got more comfortable with longer, more complex conversations. What's great about this is that you're learning in a low-pressure, friendly environment, so it doesn't feel intimidating.
And the beauty of it is that you don't have to look for a language partner in person. You can connect with people from all over the world online. Apps like HelloTalk or Tandem are excellent for this. You can even do voice messages if you're not comfortable with live video or phone calls at first. The key here is to just get started. The more you practice with a partner, the faster you'll improve because you're learning in real time and getting immediate feedback. And it doesn't just help with speaking. Listening to another person's speech helps improve your comprehension too.
Exactly. And what's amazing is that you're learning so much more than just the language. You're also picking up on cultural nuances and different ways of expressing yourself. My language partner and I would exchange stories about our countries, which made the conversations even more interesting. Plus, you build a connection with someone who's also on a language learning journey, so you can motivate and help each other. If you're nervous about starting, just remember that your language partner is probably just as nervous, and that creates a relaxed, supportive space to practice.
Now that you've started practicing with a language partner, one thing you'll want to focus on is pronunciation and intonation. It's not just about what you say, but how you say it. Sometimes, pronunciation can be the difference between being understood or not. And intonation, the way your voice rises and falls when you speak, can make you sound more natural and confident in English. One thing I always tell learners is to listen closely to how native speakers pronounce certain sounds and try to mimic them. It's a really effective way to improve.
Yes, Ryan. This was something I struggled with in the beginning. I found it challenging to pronounce certain sounds that didn't exist in my native language. But once I started focusing on it more, I realized it wasn't as hard as I thought. I would slow down and really pay attention to how native speakers pronounce words, especially those tricky sounds like the or are. Mimicking helped me a lot. I'd repeat words or phrases over and over until they felt natural. It's a slow process, but the more you practice, the better you get.
Absolutely. And one fun way to practice is by using shadowing, where you listen to a native speaker and try to repeat what they're saying as closely as possible, matching both pronunciation and intonation. You can do this with podcasts, TV shows, or even YouTube videos. It's like singing along to a song, but you're practicing speech instead. Intonation is especially important because it adds emotion and meaning to your words. If you use the wrong intonation, even a simple sentence can sound strange. So focusing on this will really help you sound more natural and fluent.
I love the shadowing technique. It really helped me improve my intonation, especially when I was learning how to ask questions in English. The rise and fall of your voice can completely change the way a sentence is understood. And I also practiced by reading aloud. I would read paragraphs from books or articles, trying to match the intonation patterns I heard from native speakers. This made me more confident when speaking with others, because I knew I was expressing myself in a way that sounded more natural.
Now that we've talked about pronunciation and intonation, let's dive into another powerful tool for improving your English: technology. With so many apps and online platforms available, it's easier than ever to practice your English anywhere, anytime. Apps like Duolingo or Babbel are great for learning vocabulary, while tools like Elsa Speak can help improve your pronunciation using AI. The best part is that these apps give you instant feedback, so you can correct yourself right away. Technology has really changed the game when it comes to language learning, and it's something everyone should take advantage of.
Yes, Ryan, I agree. Technology was a huge part of my learning process. I used Duolingo to build my vocabulary and basic grammar skills, and I even used YouTube to watch English tutorials on specific language problems I had. I remember using the Elsa Speak app, which was so helpful because it analyzed my pronunciation and told me exactly where I was going wrong. It felt like having a personal coach with me all the time. I'd practice a word, and Elsa would give me feedback right away. Plus, I could practice as many times as I needed to get it right.
Exactly. And the great thing about using apps is that they're so convenient. You don't need to set aside an hour every day to study. You can practice for just 10 to 15 minutes whenever you have free time. Whether it's on your commute or during a break at work, these small bursts of practice can really add up over time. Some apps even gamify the learning experience, making it more fun to keep practicing every day. And beyond just apps, you can also use tools like Google Translate to check your pronunciation or look up new phrases in real time.
Yes, and another feature I found helpful was speech recognition in some apps, where the app would listen to my speaking and tell me how close I was to native pronunciation. It really helped me fine-tune those tricky words and phrases. Also, using language learning platforms like Italki or Preply allows you to have lessons with real teachers from around the world. I had a few lessons where the teacher corrected my grammar and pronunciation in real time, which was so helpful. These platforms let you practice speaking with experts, which is a great way to accelerate your progress.
Now, building off the idea of using technology to practice consistently, let's talk about a key mindset shift that can make a huge difference: thinking in English. This is a hack that a lot of advanced learners use to really immerse themselves in the language. Instead of translating from your native language to English, you want to start thinking directly in English. It helps you process thoughts faster and speak more naturally. The goal is to make English your go-to language for internal thoughts, even if it's just for a few minutes a day at first.
Absolutely, Ryan. I remember when I made the switch to thinking in English. It wasn't easy at first, but it really sped up my fluency. Instead of translating every sentence in my head, I started trying to describe my day or my thoughts directly in English. It felt strange at the beginning, but over time, it became more natural. I'd think about what I was going to say before ordering food or asking for directions, and it reduced the time I needed to respond. Thinking in English really helps you stop second-guessing yourself and lets your words flow more naturally.
That's a great example, Priya. Thinking in English can also help you respond faster during conversations. When you stop relying on translation, you don't have to pause and think about every word or sentence. One practical tip for listeners is to start with small things, like narrating your actions in your head. If you're walking to the store, think about how you'd describe that in English. I'm going to the store to buy groceries. Or when you're planning your day, try doing it in English. These small moments of thinking in English will add up and eventually become second nature.
Exactly. Another way to practice this is to have conversations with yourself in English. I'd often ask myself questions like, "What am I going to do today?" Or, "How do I feel about this situation?" And then answer in English. It felt like I was training my brain to respond automatically in English without needing to translate. And the more I did it, the easier it became to have actual conversations with others because my mind was already prepared to think and respond in English. This is a really powerful hack for anyone looking to boost their fluency.
Finally, building on the idea of thinking in English, it's crucial to surround yourself with opportunities to speak. Speaking is a skill that improves with practice, and the more chances you have to speak, the better you'll get. Whether it's finding a language partner, attending language meetups, or even speaking with coworkers and friends, the goal is to immerse yourself in real conversations as often as possible. The more you use the language in natural settings, the more comfortable you'll become, and your fluency will improve much faster.
Yes, Ryan. And I think this is where a lot of people get stuck. They don't have enough opportunities to practice speaking in real life. That's why it's important to actively seek out those opportunities. When I was learning, I joined a local language group that met once a week to practice English. It was a great way to have casual conversations in a relaxed setting. I also found online meetups where I could practice with people from different parts of the world. Just having those consistent speaking opportunities made a huge difference in my confidence.
That's a great point, Priya. And for listeners who might not have access to local language groups, there are so many online communities available. You can find English practice groups on social media platforms like Facebook or Reddit, or even participate in virtual language exchanges. The key is to be proactive in finding these opportunities. The more you speak, the more natural it becomes. And even if it's just a quick conversation with a friend or coworker, it's valuable practice. You don't need formal settings to improve. Everyday interactions are just as important.
Exactly. And another tip is to create speaking opportunities in your daily life. For example, when you're at a restaurant or a store, try asking questions in English, even if you know the answer. It's about putting yourself in situations where you need to speak, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. The more you practice in real situations, the less anxiety you'll feel. And remember, it's okay to make mistakes. What matters is that you're actively trying to use the language. Over time, speaking will become second nature.
To wrap things up, remember that consistency is key. Practice speaking daily, use technology to your advantage, and find opportunities to engage with others in English. These small habits will lead to big improvements over time. Exactly, and don't forget to enjoy the process. Stay patient, keep learning, and celebrate every bit of progress you make. You've got this.